Good morning, traders. Good morning. This is Manny the Magoo. Today is May 15th, Saturday, approximately 10:15 a.m. Just wanted to get this video out there. Again, this is for entertainment purposes only, and the only thing I ask you to do is hit that like button, hit the bell. Every time I put out a video, you will be notified. This is the first time I'm going to be explaining something like this, so I hope you enjoy it. This is something that I haven't used in quite some time. I used to use it years ago. And with all the volatility in the market, every tool in your arsenal also helps when you make a trade. So I just wanted to go over this with you. What I have here on my chart, these are called pivot points, okay? These are actually weekly pivot points. Now, if you don't know what pivot points are, you can go to Google, type in pivot points. It'll give you the history of them, but just a quick grasp. Pivot points are technical analysis indicators, okay? What a pivot point does, it uses a prior period, its day high, the low, and the close price for a specific period in order to define the future support and resistance areas, okay? What they do then is they apply those calculations to determine the points. And additionally, they determine stock market trends over different periods of time. Okay, they were originally used by floor traders on many stock exchanges. Again, they used to calculate the high, they calculated the low, and then they calculated the closing price. They added those three together, and then they divided them by 3. Okay, and that would give you the price and the pivot point area for the following day. So this is a 5-minute, 5-day chart. This was Friday here, and this dark black color here. The gray areas are my pre-market and after hours. But the purple line that you see here, and I hope you guys can see this, this is the pivot point. You can call it actually the VWAP. For those of you that know about the VWAP, it's almost like the magnet where price action, magnetizes to for whatever reason. It's basically the area the most concentrated area after that calculation. And what you have here is this red line here is resistance number 1. This would be resistance number 2. And obviously, you can also use resistance number 3 and so on and so forth. I use the 3 resistance. That's more than enough. And then you have the green lines here. That would be support number 1, support number 2, and support number 3. So what I really pay attention to are the pivot lines. And I'm going to show you how I usually play these. Now, this is, we can take any ticker symbol if you want. Let's look at AMD, Advanced Micro Devices. I'll show you how this works. So I don't use it on a 1-minute time frame. I use it on a 5-minute, 5-day time frame. I can clearly see the last 5 days, and I can clearly see my pivot lines. These are weekly pivot lines. They're also, you can calculate it to use a daily pivot line. I use the Thinkorswim platform. It's very easy to go to. If you click on your studies, okay, I'll show you how to get there. Studies, and you go to add study, okay. Let's see here, and actually, you know what? You can go to studies, and then edit studies, and if you type in to this area, pivot, just pivot, it's the second one. It's called pivot points. You click on it, you add. I already have mine on there, okay? And basically, that's how you add it. Now, pivot points are areas of support. They're areas of resistance. So as you can see in this chart, and I'm just going to highlight this area here. This was Thursday's run on AMD. As you can see, we broke below the pivot line, and then we try to reclaim the pivot line. Once we break below the pivot line then becomes an area of resistance, okay? So just like I play my candles, a weekly candle's high, a weekly candle's low are areas of support and resistance. If we get a break on the weekly candle to the upside, well, that previous week's high then becomes support, okay? In this case, if you take a look at AMD, the pivot line, we've got to the pivot line and then we pull back. And what did we do? We actually pulled back almost to the first support. It bounced off the first support and it kind of just went sideways for a while, okay? So here's another example. I'm going to highlight here. As you can see, this was the day before. We opened under the pivot line, okay? AMD tried to break the pivot line. Again, the pivot line became an area of resistance, and then AMD just went sideways along that area. So let me explain to you how I play them. Okay, here's an example. So here you have it. AMD, it opened above the pivot line, and then it broke the pivot line. Now, if it breaks the pivot line, that's telling me that a possible short could come into play, knowing that the pivot line then is going to be my resistance. Just like the candles, if the price action breaks below the pivot line and reclaims the pivot line and breaks above it, you can always get out, right, folks? Okay, so let's show you another example. Yesterday, I'm going to show you an example of NEO, okay? Actually, you can see, this is Thursday. You can see NEO opened on Thursday above the pivot line. It tried to march up, but could not. And then what did NEO do? It broke below the pivot line. I took the trade as a short, and basically it tried to reclaim the pivot line again. The pivot line then acted as a resistance, and NEO, all it did was come on down. Okay, so I've been looking at this lately, and I'm noticing, as you can see here, I hope you guys can see this, but look at when, here's another example. NEO opened on the support of the second pivot line. So it's almost overextended or oversold to the downside. Okay, you can also play this as a long play off of a support line. So this is the second support on NEO. NEO opened, okay? If you wanted to, you could have gotten in the trade here, realizing that the next support was actually going to be resistance, but it wasn't, and it continued going. But as NEO kept marching up, look what happened as soon as it got to that pivot line. The pivot line acted as an area of resistance and then pulled back. So this is a very good indicator that if you're in a trade, you kind of want to pay attention to it. You know, if you see that, here I'll show you another example. Let's look at the SPY. Okay, if you see here, look at this. So here's on Monday, the SPY broke down, broke the first area of support. Let me highlight this area here so you can clearly see it. The SPY, it broke down, broke the first area of support. You could have taken it as a short. So let's say you were in it and you were shorting it right here, okay? As the stock price is going down, realize the second area of support is going to be right there or just before it. So if you want, you can take your profits before that even happens, or you can hang on to the trade until it comes back. Okay, that's up to you. But as you can clearly see, look what happened here. It broke the first area of support on that pivot line. It tried to reclaim it. Again, that area becomes resistance. It hit it exactly, pulled back, and then it broke. And then what did it do? Well, as long as it's above that support area and that pivot line, okay, price action's above it now, this area does become support. Here, it was resistance. Now, it never reached the main pivot line. The purple line is the main pivot line, okay? That's going to calculate and that's going to determine the day. So, as you can see here, what happened on Friday, Okay, we opened above the pivot line, which is a bullish sign, and the SPY just kept on going up that day. Okay, now if the SPY would have continued going up and would have reached that first area of resistance or close to it, I'm gonna be taking my profits, because chances are this is a major area of resistance. Chances are it's going to hit it and then pull back. Okay, so let's take a look at maybe something else. I don't know, let's look at Boeing. Here's Boeing. Okay, here's a good example. There you have it. We've opened above the pivot line on Boeing, and then at 10 a.m. in the morning on this day, it broke the pivot line, and it was down from there. So the pivot line acted as support. When it opened above it, it should have been a bullish indicator to go long. However, we did break back down around 10:30 in the morning, and it was all she wrote from there. So this worked well. Let's take a look at maybe another stock here. QQQ. Let's look at the Nasdaq Qqq Etf. Worked very well, as you can see. Here's a pivot line. This is the first support. It opened below the main central pivot line, and then it walked up there. And what did it do? That main pivot line then became resistance, and we went sideways the rest of the day. The following day, which is right here, let's call this Tuesday or Wednesday, we opened below the main pivot line, and what did QQQ do? It came back, found support on the first support area, and then just went sideways. So I'm not saying this is the holy grail. What I'm saying, there's no such thing as the holy grail, by the way, any indicator in the stock market. I like it because it's not a lagging indicator, okay? I do not like trading with lagging indicators like the RSIs, the MACDs, moving averages so much. Reason being, I'm a price action trader, and for those of you that don't understand support and resistance, and that's the reason I don't really use pivot lines as much, is because I'm truly a support and resistance trader, and I know how to read support and resistance on a 1 minute time frame, on a 5 minute time frame, on a 10-minute time frame, on an hourly, on a weekly, on a monthly. I have millions and millions of hours of chart time. And when you study this every single day, obviously you're going to get good at it. Practice makes perfect. So, you know, for those of you that are not familiar with support and resistance and don't understand it, I think this is a tool that can actually help you, identify those main areas. Again, I like using the weekly pivot line. Some people like using the daily pivot line. I will just show you the difference. If I go to my edit studies, I go to my pivot lines, and I change the weekly to a daily. I hit OK, I hit apply. My pricing is going to change completely. Okay, as you can see, pricing drops quite a bit as far as the pivot lines are concerned. So there's a lot more resistance using the weekly ones. There's a lot more support using the weekly ones. Why? It's a larger time frame. It holds a lot more weight. I like playing with the weekly and monthly breaks. It holds a lot more weight. There's a lot more validity in the trade. Okay, so that's why I use them. I'm not saying the daily ones don't work. They do, as you can clearly see here. On this day, QQQ opened below the pivot line, and then once it got there, the pivot line became resistance, and it just went sideways from there. Okay, so these are very good indicators when you're in a trade. If you just want to see the next area of possible resistance or the next area of possible support, and it's getting close to it, maybe you want to think twice about, either exiting the position, taking your profits, or maybe not getting into the position. okay? It can also stop you from getting into the position. For example, let's say you automatically think that the QQQ, as it's marching up, let's say you automatically think that, okay, you know, it's at the main pivot line, let's just go long. You never want to do that, okay? Why? Because that main pivot line is right now acting as a major area of resistance. Let's say, for example, we were to break that. Here's another example. Let's say we were to break that pivot line and march to the upside, okay? Well, you know, would you want to get into the trade right here? Probably not. Why? Well, if you take a look, and history repeats itself, number one, you know, we're getting close to that major resistance 1 level of that pivot line. And that area is definitely going to be an area of resistance. So chances are this stock will be pulling back to the main pivot line to find some support. Okay? So I'm hoping this is helping. We can review one more, and I'm just going to change the studies. I'm going to go to my weekly again. I really like the pivot line on the weekly support. Let's change that, hit OK, hit apply, and hit OK again. As you can see, it just automatically completely changed the pivot line area. So let's look at another stock, PLTR. Let's look at PLTR. As you can see, this is, again, a 5-minute. Let me erase this line here, remove, so we don't get confused. These are my weekly. And I use this with weekly, and I also add my monthly highs and lows. So it just gives me another layer of knowledge when I'm trading. But as you can see here, let's take this trade here. As you can see, PLTR did open that day above the pivot line. That's a bullish indicator, okay? If it opened above it, you can take it long if you want. It broke the first resistance, so it was very powerful that day. I really wanted to move, but we broke the first resistance area, and now we're heading to the second. Obviously, folks, this is extremely overextended. So if you're in the trade and you don't want to take your profits on the first pivot line, which I probably would have, knowing that it was going to be an area that it was going to fall back on, you can hang on to it if you want, or you can sell half of your position or 60% of it, hang on to the rest to see if it does. Keep going. I'm not saying it's not going to continue going, but when you see, if you take a look here, that day PLTR was very bullish. And you know, it came back, it broke that first area of support, it settled, went up again, and then tried to get up to that second resistance area, but failed, and it just couldn't move up anymore. Anyhow, I just wanted to put that out there. There is a lot to learn on pivot lines, obviously, but if you want to look at them, if you want to study them, there are a lot of videos out there, and go to Google, type in pivot points. You could read the history on them. It's good to always educate yourself. If you have any questions, any concerns, any comments, you can email me, hunterchasetrading@gmail.com, or just comment below. Hope everyone has a great weekend, and enjoy the day.